It's good to be with you this morning. We're in week 3 of our 7-week series called LivingStones, where we as a church have been given the God-sized task after nearly 100 years as a church of building a new facility and a new campus that will allow us to meet the needs of the Oakdale community and beyond for the next 100 years. And now we've been challenged with determining how we as individuals and as families are going to be able to support that vision. And what we're trying to do during the LivingStones campaign is to give you the truths and the principles, even the tools, to help you make decisions that are pleasing to God. Then on December the 2nd, we're all going to come together. We're going to have a combined worship service, something that we don't get to do very often. And we're going to share the results of the campaign, and we're going to celebrate all that God has done and all that God wants to do in and through Oakdale. Now, if you're a guest this morning, or if you're still pretty new to Oakdale, I want you to understand as we talk about this that there's no pressure. There's no pressure for you to participate in the LivingStones campaign, but I think it's important for you to know that you represent the reason that we're trying to honor God through this fundraising and building campaign. Someone who is here for the very first time, someone who is here seeking God maybe for the first time, you are the reason that we set this time aside and that we say to God, God, show us your will for our church. Show us the sacrifices that have to be made so that we can meet the needs of the people that you love and that you're trying to minister to. Now, as strange as it may seem, I want to begin this morning by asking you to think about your death. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning, huh? I'm being serious. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about our death and the implications that it has on, for a lack of a better way to explain it, our life. See, as humans, death is an inevitable part of life. Unless God intervenes in human history during our lifetime, each one of us here this morning will experience death. It's inevitable, it's unavoidable, and the mortality rate for humans is 100%, right? For each of us, there will come a day when a preacher will stand at the head of our grave and will summarize our life. And by the way, that's why I always remind you, that's why you better be nice to your preacher, okay? There's going to come a day when that is going to happen for each one of us. And occasionally when someone dies, you'll hear a preacher talk about how that person lived their dash. Now, are you familiar with that phrase, what that means? It's a reference to the tombstone. Most of the time on a tombstone, there will be a date of birth, there'll be a date of death, and then there'll be a dash in between those two dates. And any good preacher will tell you it's not the dates, but the dash that should matter. In other words, it's everything that happens between birth and death that determines whether or not we lived a life of significance. A few weeks ago, I told you the story of a woman who suffered the misfortune of dying at a time when the only person available at the local newspaper to write her obituary was the sports director. And so because he couldn't think of anything significant that had ever taken place in her life, her obituary read, "Saturday we inter the bones of Miss Emily Jones. Her life held no terrors. She lived in Old Maid. She died in Old Maid." Anybody remember the rest? No runs, no hits, no errors, right? Now, I think it's safe to say that none of us want that kind of obituary written about our lives when we die, right? That's not what we want. There's something in us. There's something in human nature that longs for significance. So let me ask you a question. If you could choose today, if you could choose an epitaph to be engraved on your tombstone, what would you want it to say? What is the ultimate epitaph for a human's life? He was a good person. She did the best with what she had. What would your tombstone say? Take just a moment right now, and I want you to try to answer that question for yourself in your own mind. Now, I want to suggest to you that the ultimate epitaph for a human's life was actually written thousands of years ago for a guy named King David. You remember David? The boy who slew a giant, became a king, had some incredible victories, had some horrible, horrible mistakes, but ultimately he led God's nation as a man after God's own heart. And here's how the New Testament sums up the significance of King David's life. This is from Acts 13:36. It says this, just one short verse. "And David served God's purpose in his generation." Now, David served God's purpose in his generation. Would you agree with me that as Christians, there is no greater significance than that? To have served God's purpose in your generation. Think about it. To have served God, to have accomplished His purposes, and to have done it during your time on earth. That is the ultimate epitaph for any Christian. Does everybody agree with that? Or can you agree that that is the best that we could possibly hope for? All right? What I want to show you today is that you're absolutely right, but probably for the absolute wrong reason. And here's why. Because it's not the dash that truly matters in a person's life. It's what happens after the dash. And let me show you what I mean, using David as an example. It is true that David served God in his generation. And that is incredibly significant that he did that. However, was it only in his generation that David was able to impact people? No, he impacted many generations, didn't he? I mean, we're sitting here today talking about King David. That alone is evidence that he impacted multiple generations for God. In fact, David lived approximately 3,000 years ago. Genealogists say that you can expect about 4 generations per century. All right, so that's 40 generations per 1,000 years, which means that to date, King David has impacted approximately 120 generations with his life alone. Now, you got to admit, that's pretty significant, right? But that's still not why serving God's purpose in your generation is the ultimate epitaph for a Christian. Here's why. When we look at David's epitaph, he served God's purpose in his generation, we're focusing on the wrong word. It's not the word generation that contains the most significance. It's the word purpose. Now, stick with me for a second, all right? 120 generations of impact, that is pretty significant. And think about it, David's not even done. Who knows how many more generations will continue to be impacted by his life long after we're gone. But even if the number of generations impacted by David's life ended up numbering in the thousands, that is absolutely nothing compared to the significance of God's purpose that David served. But what is that purpose? Well, here at Oakdale, you'll hear us talk about and you'll hear us teach on the 5 biblical purposes of the church. In fact, probably many of you could name them for me. Worship, fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and evangelism. And we tell you that everything we do here must be about one or more of those 5 things, or we have no business doing it. Those 5 purposes are incredibly important to God, and that's why they're incredibly important to us. But, and stay with me, each of those 5 biblical purposes of the church, they exist to serve God's ultimate purpose. Now, I could show you hundreds of places in the Bible that tell us what the ultimate purpose is, but I'm just going to use one passage this morning. It's found in the book of Ephesians, chapter 1. It was written by the Apostle Paul. This is the New Living Translation, and here's what it says. I want you to listen to this. Even before He made the world, God loved us and chose us in Christ to be holy and without fault in His eyes. God decided in advance to adopt us into His own family by bringing us to Himself through Jesus Christ. This is what He wanted to do, and it gave Him great pleasure. And then verse 10. And this is His unchanging purpose. Here we go. At the right time, He will bring everything together under the authority of Christ, everything in heaven and on earth. So what is God's ultimate purpose? His unchanging plan and purpose from the creation of the world is, through Christ, to redeem, to win, to adopt as many people as will accept Him, so that all of those people may spend eternity with Him in heaven. That's it. That is God's ultimate purpose. That's the ultimate purpose of the Bible. That's the ultimate purpose of King David's life and his continuing influence. That's the ultimate purpose of the church in human history, and that is the ultimate purpose of Oakdale Baptist Church. And that purpose is the only valid reason, by the way, that we're challenged to sacrifice and support the LivingStones campaign. It will be a resource. It will be a tool that we use to win people for Christ, God's ultimate purpose. I want you to think about it. In 1920, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, there was a group of people who made a sacrifice. And it allowed them to establish a church and to build a building so that they could serve God's purpose in their generation. Do you see that? That's important for us to understand. Had it not been for their sacrifice, there wouldn't have been the next generation who built the next building in the 70s. Had it not been for the sacrifice of that generation, there wouldn't have been the generation who built this building in 2003. And let's make sure we understand, had it not been for that generation and for their sacrifice in 2003, very few of us would be here this morning together. Do you know that the first couple of pledges we received for the LivingStones campaigns a month ago was more than the entire cost of the church's first building project? Do you know that even before we began the public phase of the campaign 3 weeks ago, we already had more money pledged than the entire cost of the 2003 project? Now, having said all that, we have a long, long way to go to raise the money that we will need to begin phase 1 of this project. But do you see how the blessings and the impact has grown exponentially over the years? That's part of how you know that God is in it. It's part of how you know that God is blessing, because it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So if we believe that God's ultimate purpose is eternal in nature, let me have you go ahead and write that into your notes if you would. If we believe that God's ultimate purpose is eternal in nature, and if we believe that the ultimate epitaph for our life and this church should be to serve God's ultimate purpose in this generation and beyond in a way that will impact eternity, and if as a church we are committed to seeking God's direction to help us make our decision and to keep our commitment in the years to come, then the question that we have to wrestle with is, how do I prepare to make an eternal impact with my life? If God's ultimate purpose, if His ultimate significance is about impacting eternity, then how do I prepare my life? How do I prepare my family? How do I prepare my church? How do I prepare my sacrifice to impact life eternally? Now, what I want to do this morning is I want to just show you 4 areas of our lives that have to be evaluated. And then I want to just use a little tool to help us do that evaluation. Here's the first area, and again, let me encourage you to fill in the blanks here. Here's the first one. First of all, we have to establish and then develop a saving relationship with Christ. We have to establish and then develop a saving relationship with Christ. Now, I know that's an obvious first step. Okay? That's the first step to preparing to make an eternal impact with your life, establishing a relationship with Christ. John 1:12 says, "To all who receive Him, Christ gives him the right to become children of God." And I do want you to notice, not everybody is a child of God. Sometimes people will say to me, well, now, everybody's part of God's family. No, only those who receive Him into their heart, into their life. So God wants you to establish a relationship with Him. But how do you do that? Well, you do it the same way you establish any relationship. It begins with a commitment. When I wanted to establish a permanent relationship with Christine, with my wife, I did it by making a commitment. The commitment that I made to her was to love, to honor, to cherish her as my wife until death do us part, right? And in turn, she made that same commitment to me. Now, those of you who know us a little bit better than others might say, well, now wait a minute, weren't you guys like high school sweethearts? Isn't that where you established your permanent relationship? And let me just ask you this, have you ever been to high school? Okay? That's called dating. Dating was fine for a season, but it would have never been good enough for a lifetime. Okay? In the words of the great theologian Beyonce, if you like it, you got to put a ring on it, right? That's how it works. All right, so here's what happened. So as I'm trying to, I know I got to make a commitment to her that's going to last a lifetime. I began by investigating that relationship, and I did that by asking her out on a date. And then because she said no the first time, I had to ask her out on a second date. And then she said yes. And over time, as we dated, as we spent time together, I came to know who she is and what kind of person she was. And I did that we did it by dating for 3 years. But then I made a decision about my commitment to her based on what I'd experienced, based on what I'd come to believe about her, and that commitment was marriage. Now, if you want to be a part of God's family, you've got to make a commitment. And not just a lifelong commitment, but an eternal commitment. Now, some of you may be in that initial investigative stage with God. And you know what? That's fine. Continue to gather evidence. Continue to draw conclusions based on God's Word. But you know what? For some of you, it's time for you to move forward with that commitment. It's time for you to stop dating God and get married. It's time for you to make the commitment. Then once we make a lifelong commitment to God and we receive Him and we accept Him as our Savior, then it's time for us to develop a relationship with Him. Do you realize that so many Christians grow older without ever growing up? You know, it's true, but it's not supposed to be that way. And again, developing a relationship with God, it's a lot like developing any meaningful relationship. You've got to spend time together. You cannot have a relationship with somebody that you do not spend time with. Then you have to communicate. You have to talk, and you have to listen. We do that through prayer. We do it with worship. We do it through studying God's Word. Did you know that each week during our 40-day campaign, we're giving you a single Bible verse and asking you to use it to spend some time with God. Just a single, simple verse that you could look up and you can consider and you can spend some time just letting God speak to your heart about it, and even you sharing with God your reaction to His Word. Each week, our LivingStones prayer team is not only developing their relationship with God by praying for you, they're also asking you to join them in prayer each morning at 7 a.m. and to fast during lunch on Wednesday as we seek God's direction for our church. And then we have something truly special to share with you in the area of prayer and developing your relationship with God. But I've been sworn to secrecy until next week, and I'm not allowed to tell you. And so you come back next week, and it's going to be really exciting to share with you what's been taking place. The first step to preparing to make an eternal impact with your life is you got to establish, then develop a saving relationship with Christ. Here's number 2. I have to use my time in view of eternity. I have to use my time in view of eternity. Colossians 4:5 says, use your time in the best way you can. Did you know that our time is our most precious resource? That it's far more important than money? It's true. Here's why. You can get more money, but you can't get more time, can you? You only have a certain amount of time that you're allotted for your life. And another problem is you don't know how much it is. In life, you can't make time. You can't borrow time. You can't save time. You can't extend time. What is the only thing you can do with time? Use it. That's all you can do. We all have every one of us has the same amount of time every week. Anybody know? I just learned this week. I had to sit down and do multiplication, and I told my teacher I'd never need that. Anybody know how many hours are in a week? 7 days, 24 in a day. Anybody? What is it? I am so glad to know something you guys don't know. That is awesome. 168. That's exactly 100. That's a lot. Doesn't it seem like a lot? I wonder how much of that we spend sleeping. 168 hours a week. Here's the deal. We all have the same amount. Every single one of us has 168 hours in a week. If you don't learn to manage your time well and use your time well, you know what? You cannot manage anything else in your life because your time is your life. Now, one of Satan's strategies is to get you so busy doing unimportant things that you don't have time for the important things in life. And then you don't have time to spend towards preparing for eternity. You say, well, I thought Satan's job was to get me to sin. Well, Satan doesn't have to get you to sin. If he can't get you to be bad, he'll just get you to be busy. Acts 20:24 says this, life is worth nothing unless I use it for doing the work assigned me by the Lord Jesus. You know what that is? It's to use your time in view of eternity. That's why it's so important that we do it. Here's the next area. I have to make sure that I use my talents in view of eternity. Will you write that word in? Use my talents. This is my skills, my heart, my passion, my personality, everything that God made me to be. I've got to be able to leverage that in terms of eternity. 1 Corinthians 6:20 says, use every part of your body to give glory back to God. You know what that means? It means you were made for ministry. Your body and your mind and your heart and your personality, that was all designed by God to serve God. But here's the thing, we've got to be willing to submit to that. One of the neat things that's happened over the last few months as we've been preparing for the LivingStones campaign is seeing different people using different talents in different ways than we've ever seen them used before. Many times we didn't even know that they could. We didn't even know that they had this gift or this ability. And it's so neat to watch somebody do something that they were absolutely made to do. Have you ever had something you did? Like, I know, for instance, that, and Rex Moore is not in here this morning, but I know that Rex Moore has this thought about 17 times a day. Man, I would have liked to have been a professional golfer. I mean, that is the life, right? That's not even a job. Just going around every day, playing golf, preparing to play golf, talking about golf, thinking about golf. I mean, that's what Rex would do, right? If he had his choice, he would say, that is not even a job. Well, you know what? Sometimes it's like that when we find those things that God made us to do. We do them, and other people are going, oh man, how did you talk her into doing that? How in the world did you convince him to do that? And it's like, it's not even a job. It just feels right. It's a beautiful thing when somebody submits to allowing God to use their talents and to do it in view of eternity. Are you using your time? Are you using your talents? Not just for you, not just for your family. Are you using them in view of eternity? And then the last area that we need to address is this. I must use my treasure in view of eternity. Now, I want to give you an illustration that I hope would help us understand why using our treasure in view of eternity is so important. And I want you to just kind of work with me here, okay? Let's suppose that Congress, before the end of this year, passes a law that says sometime in 2013, don't know when, but sometime in 2013, the Chinese yen would become the official American currency. I just want you to let that sink in for just a moment, okay? And I can't imagine, now no grumbling, I can't imagine why this would happen, but honestly at this point, it wouldn't completely surprise me either, okay? Now here's the thing. Come sometime in 2013, no longer would we use American dollars. Everybody would have to use the yen to buy or to sell things. And since the dollar would be worthless after the exchange date, to make it fair to everybody, nobody would know the exact day of conversion. Are you with me here? It's going to come, it's going to happen sometime in the next 12 months. All of a sudden, you're going to have to start using the yen to buy and to sell, and all of a sudden the money, whatever dollars you've got, they don't count for anything. Okay? Now some of you, I can tell by the looks on your faces, you're already making a strategy. You're like, I know exactly what I'd do, right? Here's my question. If you knew that was going to happen within the next 12 months, but you didn't know when, what would your strategy be? Would you just kind of wait and say, oh, well, I'll just, when they announce the date, then I'll go down to, to the bank or the credit union and I'll just take care of it then. How many of you, come on, be honest, how many of you would probably take that strategy? Anybody? All right, one teenager, all right. One questionably mature adult, all right. Fair enough. Okay, honesty if nothing else, right? All right, but seriously, I want you to think about what your strategy would be. Now, here's my advice to you, and my advice in this area is worth exactly what it cost you, okay? My advice would be, and I think that you guys will, I think you'll agree with this, my advice would be for you to take most of your American currency and immediately convert it over to the Chinese yen, so that you wouldn't be caught with worthless dollars after the exchange date. And then you would only hold on to enough American dollars to meet your daily needs. for the next year, because there's going to be some period of time from 1 day up to 1 year where you're still going to need American dollars, correct? I mean, you're not going to be able to buy stuff with the yen yet, so you got to have those American dollars. But on the exchange date, whatever American dollars you have is going to be worthless. All right, does this make sense? That sound like reasonable, practical financial advice? I'm going to convert everything I can to the yen, going to hold on to just enough to get me through at least 1 year. All right, so here's how that translates into us using our treasure in view of eternity. Jesus says one day there's going to come an exchange date on your life. You're going to die. And none of the material things that you've accumulated here are going to have any value there. So you need to hold on to just enough now, just enough of what you've been blessed with to continue to function and to continue to provide for your family. And then you need to immediately exchange as much of what you have here for things that will have an impact on eternity. And here's the thing, every one of us knows good and well only a fool would go through their life unprepared for something they know is inevitable, right? We know that is not a good strategy. So here's what I'd have you consider. At Oakdale, we've worked really hard over the past years to create an environment that encourages planned percentage giving. You guys, how many of you have heard me talk about that? You've heard me discuss that before. Okay, we talked about it many, many times. Planned percentage giving as opposed to emotional, pressured, inconsistent giving. If you're a part of Oakdale, you know that we expect you to participate in planned percentage giving. And then from time to time, we ask for need-based sacrificial giving. That's giving that hurts. It goes beyond the normal giving that we do consistently, planned out on a percentage basis. And you know, that's really what the LivingStones campaign is about. We want you to see the blessings you've been given in your life. We want you to see the need for us to provide a facility that would allow us to impact eternity more effectively, and then make a commitment to sacrifice along with your planned percentage giving to accomplish a God-sized goal. And in doing that, I want you to understand how you have the opportunity as an individual, as a family, as a church, to impact eternity and to serve God's purpose in our generation and for generations to come. 1 Timothy 6 says this. It couldn't be any more plain. Use your money to do good, always being ready to share whatever God has given you. By doing this, you will be storing up real treasure for yourselves in heaven. It's the only safe investment for eternity. And you'll be living a fruitful Christian life down here as well. Let me ask you this question. Where are you storing your treasures? In heaven or on earth? Remember, you can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. You can leverage it for eternity. How do you do that? By investing it in ways that give people opportunity here to go there. I tell you what, let's do. Let's use what we call the life investment guide. At the bottom of your notes, you'll see a separate little section with some scales on it. Let's just take just a couple of minutes and do this. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to evaluate yourself. I want you to put an X on each of these areas where you would say that you are right now. And then I want you to circle a spot on the scale where you'd like to be, let's say in 6 months, half a year away. And nobody can tell you what's right for you. That's between you and God. All right, let's start with time. In my life, in terms of time, what percentage of my time each week is invested in spiritual growth, in spiritual matters, in developing ministry skills? And just make a little X. Is it 10% of my time? 40% of my time? 80% of my time? Mark it with an X. And then I want you to just circle and say, you know, here's where I'd like to be. Here's where I think God probably wants me to be. And don't put 100. Don't put 100, because guess what? You still live in the world, right? God needs you in the world. If He didn't need you in the world, He'd take you out of this world. You still got to live there. So don't put like 100 and then be like, everybody see mine? 100%. Be realistic. Be honest with yourself. Ask God to show you, this is what I want from you. It may be this now. It may be this later. Just be honest. Then the second one, my talents. What percentage of your talents, your gifts, your abilities, your passion, your heart, your personality are you using and investing in service, practicing serving and ministering to people? Put an X beside talent on the scale. 10%, 40%, 80%. And then circle on the scale where you'd like to be, where you feel like God would want you to be. Over time, 6 months, as I make a deeper and deeper commitment to God, this is where He would bring me. I'd be using this much of my talent for Him. And then finally, your treasure, your money, your stuff, your resources. How much of that are you investing in God's kingdom? Circle the percentage where you're at. And then mark an X. Mark a goal for you where you could grow as a believer and say, this is how far I could go in terms of my talents, my life, my time, my treasure. Now, let me just ask you something, and here's the deal. I don't know, sometimes when I ask you to do stuff like this, you guys like, I can see you don't even have pencils, but you pretend. You're like, oh yeah, I'm really working on that. And sometimes I can tell you're really doing it, but you're like, you don't want your neighbor to see, And that's fine, that's good, I understand. But here's the deal. A lot of times, for some reason, we say we're more willing to give our time and our talents than we are our treasure. You guys see that? And I don't know that they're all supposed to be equal. I just know they're all supposed to be submitted. And I know that God wants, He wants that from us. And so I would just encourage you right now, as we enter into our invitation time, just a time for us to really consider what God is saying to us individually. I want to challenge you just to let God speak to your heart about that. And maybe you have something written and maybe you don't, but you know what it is, right? You know what it is, whether it's circled or not. And I just want to encourage you to let God speak to you about that. In just a moment, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to stand and sing. We're going to continue to worship. And as we do that, I want to remind you again that if you're here taking steps for the first time in your life towards Christ, maybe you're ready to make the leap and to become a Christian and to be adopted into God's family. I'd love to visit with you about that. If you'd like to come forward and let me pray with you, I'd be happy to do that. You don't have to say anything or talk to anybody or memorize anything. We don't want to embarrass you. I just want to give you an opportunity for somebody to pray with you, and we do that. Others of us here are working through our decision about how we're going to participate in LivingStones, and I'm so excited as I see each week those commitments come in. And this morning there are commitment cards and envelopes by the offering chest. If that's a commitment your family's ready to make, we want to encourage you to do that. You guys can see the banks and the stones that are here along the front of the steps. Each week we've been asking families to come and to take a little stone. It's engraved with a cross, and we said just put this in your pocket or put this somewhere where you'll see it, and let it kind of be a reminder to you. Reminder to pray, a reminder of your commitment, a reminder of the decision that God's asking you to make. And we started saying last week we've got extras, so more than one per family. If you don't have one and you'd like one, come on and get that, and just let it be just a little simple tool to kind of help you remember. All right, let's pray together, and let's just seek after God together. Heavenly Father, I do thank you for the life you've given us, the time that you've given us, the talent that you've given us, the treasure, all the blessings, so much more, God, than anything we could ever deserve. And God, here at Oakdale, you've taught us that everything we have comes from you. Everything we have belongs to you. And we are just stewards of what's already yours. And your word says that when we surrender everything you've given us, whether it's something material, whether it's a gift or a talent, whether it's the use of our time, when we surrender it to you, that you give it back to us exponentially, that you give us blessings, that you take our service and you multiply it. you take our ministry and you multiply it. Father, we just want to be multiplied for you in this place. God, show us how to take the next steps of faith. Whether it's trusting in you for the first time, whether it's growing in our relationship with you, whether it's sacrificing something in a way we've never done. Help us take those next steps, and will you just speak to our heart and show us what that looks like. And may we be honest with ourselves and with you so that we can be obedient to you in every way. We love you, God. It's in Jesus' name I pray.